Hello and welcome. It's Doug Cunnington here, and I think we're loading folks in. Leo, how are you? Welcome. I hope you could hear me. Can you let me know in the chat if you can hear me there? And I realized I left the door open. I'll be right back to close the door. All right. Hopefully people can hear me, and we'll get started in just a moment here. So I will take a couple minutes to talk about the Amazon commission rate changes, the Amazon associate rate changes. So not a huge impact unless you have a site already out there making money. Otherwise, it's just a matter of some adjustments. So we'll get to that in a second. And, I will take a look, and can't remember if I actually put the new schedule out there for the commission rates, but we can pull that up pretty easily here. And we'll hang on just a minute to let some other folks join. Okay. Like I said, if you can hear me, normally we do the sound check deal. Unfortunately, I cannot see. They changed the interface here on good old Webinar Jam, so there's actually no audio level indications at all, which is unfortunate. So I really have no idea if anyone can hear me or not. So I hope someone can hear me. But you know what? That's all right. There was a time when I actually did a whole inner circle session, and for whatever reason, either I think it was another instance where the interface changed on Webinar Jam, so no one could actually join my call. So they were sent to a replay, and I talked for like 45 minutes before anyone was able to get in touch with me. Okay, Leo, thank you. Perfect. All right, I will get started then. We have quite a few questions today. I will share my screen here. In the fourth office hour session, so there's another 4 of these, and be sure to check the schedule, which is on the homepage, or sorry, the page with the actual links to all the inner circle sessions. So be sure to check that out. People can hear me. That's really good. So unit 3, again, we're going to do quick review. Then I'll bring up the new commission rates, and then we'll get into the questions. So as normal, I will watch the chat room very closely. So if you have questions in there, I'll get to those first before I do the ones in the presentation I have. So unit 3 was all about setting up your site, and generally here you want to think about the domain name. You want to make sure that you don't pick something that's too sort of catchy or too clever, really. Something self-explanatory and easy to type in. If you were just to mention the site to someone, they would easily be able to understand what you mean. Selecting a host, I think I talked about it a pretty decent amount in the other session, but shared hosting, usually one of the cheaper options on a well-known host like Bluehost is the way to go. It's very fast to install WordPress for those sites, for those hosting companies. For plugins, I like to keep it to a minimum. For themes, I like to keep it simple. And for headers, I also like to keep it simple. In fact, I encourage you just to, go with a, font rather than an actual graphic, something simple and clean looking. For the plugins, I will mention to reduce spam and keep spam to a minimum, and to protect your site just in general, you can take a look at these 4. So for just keeping your site safe and monitoring it, you can use Lockdown WP Admin. You can use Jetpack. There's specific modules that you can enable called Protect and Monitor. Those are 2 separate ones, and they're very good. These last 2, C and D, these are actually around reducing spam and comment spam. So this is Akismet and GASP, the GrowMap anti-spam bot plugin. Other pages you should think about are around, just making the site look like it's a real, respectable, credible site. About me page, a privacy page, disclaimer, and a contact page. A lot of times I will actually combine the disclaimer page with a privacy page. For Unit 4, that's the one that just came out. So that's all about content. We do have the Content Traffic Profit Sprint. And that is really what I recommend just on an ongoing basis. In this first sprint, we're looking at 10 pieces of content, and then you'll start promoting it, which comes later. That's in Unit 6. But you'll publish 10 pieces of content. We'll go into some of the details in the questions as we go through the session today. The perfect Amazon review. This is, pretty much the way I do all the review type articles, and it's really modular. So, for example, I think I went through it pretty well in the course, but if you, for example, want to have a much longer section on features because it's a type of item that has a lot of features, that's a great thing to do. You could just talk about features for the majority of the article, and maybe you only mention 1 or 2 products. It's totally up to you, or vice versa. If it's a product that doesn't have many features, then maybe you just talk about 1 or 2 items or benefits that you can get through the features, and then after that, you look at a dozen different products. Last, outsourcing. So in the early stages, you may not need to outsource yet because we're just looking at a smaller amount of content, and you maybe just want to have have some time with the topic that you're working on so you could learn about it. However, I still encourage you to outsource at least 1 piece of content of the 10 so that you get an idea about working with freelancers and sort of the hiccups and the issues that may occur, which they will occur, even still, me working with VAs and working on Upwork, I find it a little bit difficult. It's always challenging. So quick note on that, I will double check the specific templates that I have in the course here for outsourcing through Upwork. So one student mentioned that Upwork was, they said his job listing was, it didn't, sorry, I'm struggling with the words, it violated their policies, right? So he said Upwork took his listing off and said it was violating policies. The reason why is the word review was somewhere in there. And I'll actually do a blog post about this sometime soon. Anytime, it's fairly automated. So if they see review in the title of the job listing, they sort of flag it, kick it out. And then I actually had to open a ticket. This didn't happen to my job listing, by the way, or it didn't happen in recent memory. I think one of my job listings like 3 years ago had an issue, but I've changed it since then. Hence, that's how we ended up with these sort of templates that you're using. Anyhow, the point is they basically kept saying I was asking for paid reviews on Amazon, and I kept trying to tell them that I wasn't. So I had to go, I think, 4 layers up before anyone actually read what I was writing. They didn't quite understand. They just said, oh, looks like a review. You're asking for a review, but I wasn't. So, okay, let's get into the questions here. And, oh, actually, before the questions, I do want to talk about the changes to the Amazon program. So I'm going to pull that up really quick. So give me 1 second here. And what we'll do, just because I have the link in here. So these, I think we have Chris and we have Leo and Mohammed at least. So I think, most people probably saw, like in my blog this past week, or saw it in some other groups, Amazon is changing the associate rates. So they're essentially like reducing it for the most part. There's a couple categories that go up, but previously, actually that may be a better place to start. So the old rates were based on volume, right? So purely volume, if you sold X number of items, you got paid out a certain percentage. And it has been like that, up until this point. So a very long time. And, Amazon associates, they've been around for, I'm trying to remember, I think it may have been like the late 90s. Like it's a very early program. So the point is they changed it. So for someone like me, it's a huge impact because I already have revenue out there, and it happens to be in one of the categories that goes down to 4.5%. And another one in the 5.5% and 5%. So it is unfortunate for me. However, I'll talk about this in a minute, but I won't go too in depth. The way it impacts you, and this is what's important, right? So the way it impacts you is not a great deal. I would say as long as you're in something that's in the 4% or higher, you will be in okay shape. If you can find something with a blend, that's really good. So maybe if you have a particular niche where you can talk about luggage, shoes, and watches, and maybe like home improvement, well, that's pretty good, right? So you're in the higher end overall. The downside is it will be slightly more competitive, I think, because more people will be drawn to those because it pays out a little bit higher. Now, I will say, just looking at this, thinking about the items that I buy. So, for example, like home improvement, when I needed a miter saw, like I needed it that day. So I went down to the Home Depot up the street and bought it and started using it like 20 minutes later. So there are some items where it, depending on what it is, there's some urgency around it and you kind of need one of those things. For furniture, less people maybe buy that because they want to sit down in the sofa or chair before they buy it because comfort, comes into play. So the point is these may be, purchased a little bit less often because of the item that they are. That's not always the case, right? But I'm just making a couple observations here. So that said, the only ones that I would really kind of stay away from are things in the like maybe 3% or less. If you happen to be in the toy area, actually I have a very good friend, and she had 50% of her income coming from the toys area. So her income for last year would have been 47% lower. So a significant amount. And she's looking to, change the kind of content she has on her site so she can push different products. So anyway, we're all sort of like looking at it, trying to figure out what to do. The long and the short of it for me is, I'm roughly going to take a like 1/3, like about 34% hit if I were to apply, essentially these rates to last year's sales. So that's a big amount. However, when I look at, how many people are actually going over to Amazon from my site, The click-through rate to Amazon is like roughly like 34%. I just looked at January's data, by the way. So it's about 34% for all the traffic to my site versus like the number of clicks over to Amazon. There's some, fudge factors in there. What if the same user clicked over twice, that kind of stuff. But, the point is 34% going to Amazon is good. But what if I can, say, increase that by 34% and make some sort of assumption that the conversion rate will stay pretty close to the same? Well, that takes care of, a great deal of the reduction in the payout. So while this is it's a little bit of a bummer, it is okay. And the fact is, when you look at, the retail season and you look how much stuff, how many items people buy, this will probably still be more profitable than, say, working directly with a company as an affiliate. Just through the nature of, if I work with one vendor and they're only able to sell items in the musical instrument niche, for example, and people only do a small amount of their holiday shopping or shopping in general on that specific site, well, it's just not going to pay out as much. Potentially, one must test this stuff, but I believe because of the niches that I'm in, it'll probably be better just to stick with Amazon, and I may be able to find the one-off affiliate deal. So I'll move on from here because, I think it really affects people that already have sites that are already profitable versus, people starting new sites, which is the majority of, the people today on. If anyone has questions on that, and I see Jabron joined too, and Chris is on, Mohammed, Leo. So if you guys have questions at all, just let me know. Or if you wanted, if you want me to do, a specific session on this stuff, I can. Okay, on to the questions here. Okay, you mentioned posting 10 pieces of content for the first sprint, 5 helpful and 5 product. Do I maintain the 50-50 breakdown for all sprints? Yes, that's what I recommend. You can change that though, if you want to. You could change it. I will tell you that is what I recommend, but when I was doing this for my own site, it was more like 80% affiliate content because that's just kind of what I needed to do during those sprints. And, when I look at my site, I do need more informational type content. So that is something to keep in mind. The other thing that I've seen, I haven't done this personally, but I have seen people have, maybe 10% affiliate content and the rest of their content is informational. And they're able to get a great deal of traffic to their site through informational topics because there's lower competition. It's not a commercialized type keyword or set of keywords or topics. So they're able to go after that set of keywords, get a lot of traffic to their site organically, and then they write the copy, they write the content really well, and it encourages people to read other parts of their site. Additionally, if you have that much content that is ranking, you'll be able to really effectively, place those interlinks in the post, and you're passing, the link juice over to your affiliate content. So, stick with a 50-50. That's a nice blend. But if you wanted to, you could go to one extreme or the other. I will caution you, if you go to the extreme that I did, where it's mostly affiliate content, it is a bit risky because it's mostly affiliate content and you want to have a blend because, Amazon wants to work with people with real blogs, not just affiliate marketers. We want to be helpful to the readers that show up on our site. Okay, I mentioned it's important to have outbound links. Can I give us an idea about how many outbound links per 500 words? Yeah, so I would say per 500 words, 1 to 2 at a minimum. And, I would say up to 1 outbound link per 500 words. Any location within the content to place the outbound links. I don't think it matters too much. For me, what I typically do And I'll give you an example too. What I typically do is I'll just put it throughout the content so that it actually, it's evenly spread through the content. If you look at content marketers like Brian Dean or Neil Patel, you look at their content, there's links throughout. There's links all over the place. A lot of it goes to their other content, but they also have outbound links to other useful content. And that really shows that they're sort of a hub of information versus just someone who's, pushing out content. So to recap, 1 to 2 outbound links, i.e., not to your own site, per 500 words at a minimum, and you could go really, 1 outbound link per 100 words if you wanted to, so 5 per 500 words. Okay, this is a longer question, but again, it's important to set the context, so I'll read out the whole thing. You discuss keyword density. Let's use metal detector as an example. If I were writing an article on this, I would end up with that phrase more than once per 100 words. As I'm editing, I'll go back to change and lower the rate, lower the percentage by using synonyms like the device, the detector, and I'll also replace instances with a pronoun when I think it would be clear. Do I have any suggestions or tips for writing content without overusing the 1 or 2 word topic, 1 or 2 word topics of your website? Even with my changes, I usually end up with a base term 10 times in a 1,000-word article. Okay, that's a good question. So I struggled with this a lot, and there was a period of time, and it must have been 2 years ago, where it looked like there were, great impacts through keyword density. Even if we weren't like keyword stuffing, it looked like there were, just instances where it was really easy to overuse words. So I guess what I do now is really take a look at what you said. So I'll reduce the number of times as much as I can through synonyms. So that's kind of what I do all the time. The device, this model is another one that I like to use. But the bottom line is do your best to keep the percentages, where our targets are. But if you say go over by a couple usages, then it's okay if it reads naturally. Because at some point, if you're using so many synonyms, it's like you can tell that you're trying not to use the word. So the one thing that really, makes a huge difference is around, the 3 or 4 or 5 word keywords. That's where it makes a huge difference. So if it's best metal detector for children under 10, it's really strange to use that more than once or twice. So those are the ones that are really important. The 1 or 2 word phrases are less important. And one of the reasons why I emphasize it in this lesson is because if you do outsource some content or a lot of content, occasionally you'll find a good writer that has unfortunately been educated in the, quote, SEO writing, and they overuse keywords, even if you don't tell them to. Even if you tell them to not use keywords like that, they still sometimes do it because, actually, I won't make up a reason. I don't know why they do it. But anyway, the point is, be really mindful, especially if you are outsourcing the content. So write naturally overall is the right way to think about it. And I think, Leo, you sent in that question. So if you have follow-ups, feel free to ask here. Okay. Unit 4, about 6 minutes in, I suggest outsourcing list articles as they're easy to write. When I do this, do I give them a list of items or do I expect them to come up with a list themselves? I typically give them the list, right? Or, right, if I want 1 or 2 particular items in there, I'll tell them, pick 5. Here are 2. So you'll have 7 total, but be sure you use these 2. You can pick the rest I don't care what the others are. You usually end up with better results when you tell them exactly what to do. So, and if you don't, you could still sort of save yourself time and say, here are 2 similar list posts, and you could pick any 6 items out of the 20 that are listed across these 2 posts. So you could kind of give them some help to make sure they're pulling from good sources, and then leave it up to them. Second part is, would I ever create a list that's trying to rank for several keywords and then have the VA do filler content? Maybe. I'm not I can't imagine an example, so I'm having trouble, answering this question a little bit. But I wouldn't necessarily have a list post where I'm trying to rank several keywords. If I did, I would definitely make sure that the H2 and or H3 tags are, keyword rich, and most likely, those other, quote, several keywords would be long tails. So hopefully that answers it. And would I have a VA do the filler content? Yeah, I'd have a VA do all sorts of stuff to make it easier for me. So yeah, I'd definitely have them do filler content. At 524, I mentioned using Creative Commons images. Do I limit my search to only images that are licensed for commercial use in the Creative Commons license? So I usually just make sure it's a Creative Commons license, and I'm okay. I usually, I guess, yeah, I see what you're getting at. I haven't had any issues. So to the second part of the questions, I haven't had any issues using Creative Commons content at all. Most of the time, I think I end up using more like snapshots and just regular people versus a commercial entity. Though occasionally I may use the Creative Commons images from an actual professional photographer that would care about this stuff a little bit more and do anything. But to answer your question, I've never been contacted for using Creative Commons images. I haven't heard of anyone being contacted for using it either. And typically, I guess I probably should watch a little bit more closely. But the implication here in the question is, of course, we're using these images for a commercial, a specific commercial reason. So, technically, we should be filtering it in that way. And Leah mentions that Creative Commons non-commercial use. Oh, and yeah, so I guess across the board, Leo, thanks for clarifying that, by the way. I don't know anyone that's been contacted for using the Creative Commons images across the board, no matter the specific attribution license. But to be extra safe, it would be best to use the, I guess the ones that don't require any attribution, or the ones that are, available for commercial use. And that's all right, Leo. So Leo mentioned that, sorry for using abbreviations and not calling them out in the question. That's cool. I knew what you meant in here, even though I sort of stumbled over that a bit, but I knew what you meant. I definitely read through the Creative Commons stuff, and it's great. We can get so many images basically for free as long as we provide a link back to Creative Commons. So, okay, moving on here. I discussed using comparison tables. When outsourcing, how much guidance do I provide to the VA? Do I pick the products? Do I pick the columns? And so on. So typically, okay, so here's an interesting thing, and I maybe should have mentioned it more in the actual lesson, but I typically do not have the VAs create the tables. You could have the VAs create the tables, but just in this specific model that I have, I create the table myself. And the point being is I would provide them with a lot of guidance. I would definitely pick the products. The reason why I do it myself is because I want 100% control over it. And do I pick the columns in the table? Yes, it's very, product dependent, and a lot of it has to do with how much real estate you have on your page, and, looking at how the table would appear on a phone or a tablet. That stuff's really important. So, usually it ends up being like the product name, the, some sort of a wallet rating is what I call it now. And, maybe some sort of, just rating overall. Try to be very careful not to, use anything that could be confused with the Amazon rating. So, using a, number of stars out of 10 instead of 5 is a nice way to do it. So it's, totally different number and a different way to rate. And the other thing that I'll note is, I will actually put like multiple tables into a post. So it'll be sort of an abbreviated table at the top, and then maybe further down, I'll put like more details in there, maybe technical specs, stuff like that. And, I find that's a nice way to add more information, and people that are really interested will keep scrolling down. And lastly, do I expect them to research and include the relevant info? So I think I kind of covered it before. I end up doing most of the research. And the other part is, a lot of the clicks will go to the very first item listed. So like the placement of the items is important. So typically you want to put the most expensive item, or your favorite item at the top, because it's going to get the most clicks. And overall, I think the table is pretty important to get in place and make sure it's there. So funny story, like for a lot of my content that I have on one particular site, I sort of pushed it all out really fast. And as I mentioned, I didn't have the VA, the writer or the content manager do anything with it, like by adding a table. So a lot of my content, there's no tables on it. So one of the things that I know that I need to do is take a look at, the top 20% of my content and add tables, make sure they have tables and optimize those, because it'll improve the click rate over to Amazon. And that's really important for me to recover some of the cost, some of the reduction in the commission rate. And I see Mohammed ask a question: do I recommend to go with an hourly rate or a fixed rate for content writing on Upwork? So for writing, I recommend a fixed rate, because typically it's sort of like a per word basis. So right now I'm paying I try to target like new freelancers. So I typically only work with them for 6 weeks or something like that until they raise their prices. But in the meantime, I'm helping them get good reviews. So I'm typically paying like about $14 for like 800 to 1,000 words. So sometimes I tell them I want it closer to 800. Sometimes I tell them I want it closer to 1,000, and that is $14 plus like whatever the fee is. So a couple, another buck. And I find I get good quality writers there. For the editing and the content management, I usually do an hourly rate, because it does depend on the content that they're starting with, and I understand that that's more variable. Okay, next, Unit 4, I state, or I think that's lesson 4, it should be lesson 4. At 720, I state that one link per item in the comparison table. Do I prefer the link in the image or the title of the product? I prefer the title of the product personally, and I do recommend that you sort of test having the image in the table or not in the table. Sometimes it's better to have the image or it's better not to have the image in the table because it introduces curiosity. So you could put like the item name and then in parentheses say, see image on Amazon, and then have, that as a link, an affiliate link, and they obviously would click it because I want to know what it looks like. So overall, usually the title, just in general, I find that the links, the text links actually get more clicks than the images. I have some of the images are affiliate links, but not all of them. And a lot of times just the text converts better. Can you let us know what elements of the Amazon review you choose for H2 and H3 tags? So really, the Amazon review. Okay, so I think it may be useful for me to pull up the the perfect Amazon review. So basically, like any of the features and item names, really anywhere you have an opportunity to break up the text. Sorry, I'm scrolling here, folks. Anytime you have the opportunity to break up the text, I think it's a good idea to do so. It makes it more skimmable. So, I would maybe have a little heading over the comparison table, and it's like best metal detectors, blah, 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 over the comparison table. And then maybe it's, waterproof, like waterproof capabilities for metal detectors or waterproof capabilities or something like that. And then like audio tones or so on and so forth. So each one of these sections, I would put at least one heading. If you have the opportunity to say have an H2 heading and then like 3 H3s underneath, you have the opportunity to make all of those sort of keyword rich and target certain things. So basically just overall, like the more headings you can use, the better, and you can be creative with it. Like I said, I kind of like to make it keyword rich because that's a good thing to do. I mentioned that I have a minimum of 800 words for a product review. Does that apply to the helpful articles as well? Yeah, personally, I usually just kind of aim around that. It's a little bit more than is, typical, and I think that's a good thing. In reality, you could probably get away with 500, 400 words, but a little bit longer is usually going to attract more organic traffic. Okay. As site owners, we all have a finite amount of time or money to invest. If each line below had the same cost, which would I prefer? Let's see. I think I would probably go for the good research and high quality, and maybe the thorough research and professional writing quality. You know what? Probably the 10 articles at 1,200 words. I wouldn't want to have like just bad information, right? Because in the long run, like that's not going to convert as well. In fact, the specific case study that I'm doing with Rob, the 500K case study, that content on like the main money page that was getting 1,500, 2,000 visitors per day, like it was pretty bad. And like some people commented about how bad the content was, and when I took a look at it, it was clear the person didn't know anything about the product, and they didn't even really research that well. And we beefed it up, right? We used like just the best resources out there as far as gathering information. I created a like 1-page outline, and then I had a pretty good writer write about. Actually, I think he was a former journalist, right? So to give him credit, I think he was a former journalist who was just getting started on Upwork, and I paid him about $100 to write the content, and immediately, like as soon as we published it, there was more long tail traffic coming in, rankings moved up, and we went from about 2,500 words to like 10,000 or so. And oh, you know what? I'm sorry. I paid him about $200, if I recall correctly. It's been a couple months, but anyway, the point is having high quality content makes a difference, and having it well formatted makes a big difference, especially when we talk about the SEO implications of having, the headings and the formatting in the right place and all that kind of stuff. Additionally, if it's a compelling article, like people will read a little bit more and they're more likely to take action and have a little, trust for the site. So overall, I would go with something that is, like good research and well written is the place that I would go for. All right. Moving on, when writing content, do I have an estimate of the total time it takes you to create an article, including research, writing, editing, formatting, obtaining multimedia images? So I'll tell you, not a great one, but I'll talk through it a little bit for you. For me, it takes me forever. I'm a slow writer, and I try and make things like a little too perfect, and like I'll end up skipping the editing portion in some areas, and then if I actually do the editing, it takes me a long time. The end result always ends up better. The formatting usually takes me, I do know, the formatting and the images, it normally would take me like an hour to 2 hours for, say, 1,000-word article to go do that kind of stuff. That would also include like putting in links, outbound links, internal links, affiliate links. And then here's the part where it may be helpful. So if I hire a writer, you know what? I'm not 100% sure how long it takes them to research, write, and edit, but I would assume, an hour or two. And then for the formatting and obtaining the images and the editing, when I have my VA, my editor, or the content manager do that work, it usually takes them 45 minutes to an hour. And I typically am paying them like $9 to $10. The interesting thing is it would take me longer to do it because I'm trying to do a better job. I care a little bit more than they do, but it turns out like they're doing a good enough job that it's fine. And, instead of taking 1 to 2 hours, for me, it costs me like $9 or $10, which is quite a bargain. Okay, and then if there's any follow-ups for that question, just let me know. I mentioned I pay $10 for 500 to 800 words, but I also state the minimum word count is 800. So I see the math didn't work out with those. So do you take what they create and add filler content to hit the threshold? Do I combine the two articles and combine them? So really, I would just I would actually hire them to write more. I think I'm not sure why I put those ratios in there since the math doesn't work. So you could think of it in a different way, like hire someone to write 800 words to 1,000 words and pay them $14. That's what I'm doing currently right now. So I think when I wrote this and shot the video, it was I was in a transition period on how much content I was having written. Now I'm going a little bit higher and I'm paying a little bit more money. And Leo mentioned, I think it was the previous question, the root of the question was for me to determine how many articles I could realistically create in a 40-hour work week. Okay, gotcha, Leo. I think if we're assuming, and actually I'm going to make some assumptions, and that's all we can do, and then see how it works out. I would say you could probably do one article per day, or I could probably do one article per day, and it would probably take me, 4 to 6 hours or so for the writing, the editing, the research, for like everything. and it would probably take like 5 or 6 hours or so. But I would probably be pretty drained after that, and I probably would not want to really do much else. I wouldn't want to like get started on the next one. But that said, you may be able to cleverly sort of structure how you're doing the work so that at the end of the day, I probably wouldn't want to like go hunt around for images, but it may be a little bit easier for me to like do research and write an outline. And I would have to test it out, but I would think like one article per day without going crazy, and I would actually need a break. So, like I said, I'm not a particularly strong writer. I'm trying to get better at it, and like the words don't come easy, and I have like the perfectionism issues as well. So, really nothing working for me in that aspect. Everything went much better when I got someone else to do the writing. All right. Let's see. I suggest using Flickr Creative Commons. Can I provide an example of a page that I feel does this well? There are multiple approved formatting methods for the approved linking, for the linking, and I want your thoughts. Okay, so I forgot this question was in here, but I will show you one. Let me check this out. Empire Flippers. I think they have like their top image. Okay, it's taking a second to load. I think they have their image up at the top. It's typically one that is from Flickr, and I think they usually have it at the bottom. So I just want to double check. And of course, the one that I look at here, they don't they don't have it in here. Let me check one more here. And Jabron asks, if we find good writers, can we share them in our Facebook group so anyone interested can contact them? Yeah, sure. That's cool with me. And I would say, it's a good idea to let the writer know, so that they know like who will be contacting them. And actually, Jabron, instead of listing, who the writer is specifically, I prefer if you just say, hey, if someone needs a good writer, like in the short term, reach out to you. That way we're not posting like specific profiles for people or anything like that. And because basically I don't want someone to get like a good writer that you're recommending to get sort of hammered by people asking questions if they're not quite ready. So at least, if you can sort of vet them ahead of time, that'll be best. Okay. Hopefully we're going to see. Okay, so this has been a bust. So I don't see a good attribution here. I'm trying to think of one other. Oh, you know what? There's one more. I know this is probably not the most fun thing to go through here, but I think I could probably find it here. So, some passive income. Matt Allen, a friend of mine here, he has a few cool posts. I guest posted there once. And I think a lot of times he actually does have a Flickr image. I don't know if he has one this time though. No. So let me take another look. All right, we'll look at one more and then we'll see what happens here. And typically, So what I would expect is, okay, this is pretty decent. So image edited from original photo on Flickr by this person, and then they link to, actually they're linking to um, this specific image, I believe. Yep. So that's what they do. So typically what I end up doing is I'll put, and you know what, I'll just write it here real quick. Typically what I do is it's like, you know, image via Flickr, Creative Commons, and then for this part, I'll link to the attribution license stuff. So like, you know, the exact like license that it's supposed to be, which is typically listed, some rights reserved. So I'll link this part here would be this link. And then I would say it's the person. So typically I would like copy that. So it's Jim Hammer, and that's a link to his profile. So that's usually how I link it up right there, specifically. And then if there's multiple images, which 90% of the time there are multiple images on my content, I'll put like the other people here. So it's like, you know, a few people listed. And then each one of these has like a link over to their profile, so they get credit for like whatever the image was. So that's how I do it personally. And hopefully my screen came back. I think everyone can see it. And we'll continue on with the questions. For products, would I ever consider using a brand logo? Imagine a table of riding lawnmowers with a column labeled manufacturer. Would I use the brand logo? And so on and so forth. I haven't done that. I would probably just stay away from it, since using logos can get you in trouble. It, you know, it may sort of like imply some sort of endorsement by John Deere or Troy-Bilt. However, I do see what you're saying about the fair use in describing the products. I would be a little bit concerned about the, you know, trademark issues. So I would only use images from like the Amazon like API, or, you know, other images that you have permission to use. So further, like I've had products, very small number, but a few products, you know, sent to me by certain like manufacturers, where they, you know, they saw my site was ranking and they paid attention, and, you know, they wanted, you know, they wanted me to review the product, which, you know, I was like, sure, if you send me one, I'll definitely take a look at it. And the point is, I use some images from their site, but I like specifically asked them permission to use those images, you know, and had like an email copy of it just to make sure there was no issue. And like, the fact is, if they're sending you a product, they're probably like going to be okay with it. But I'm very concerned about, in this specific area, just the trademark infringement. So yeah, good question there, but just overall, it's easier and like less risk not to do that. Okay, we're talking about YouTube videos here. There's a specific video on cleaning a metal detector. Leo mentions that it's a low quality video, and he's wondering if no video is worse than a bad video. I think like if it's a low quality video, you know, don't do it. Just find something that's good, or just skip it. You know, kind of to the point that I was making before around like having a high quality, you know, article that's well written. It's better than, you know, having a crappy one. And you know what, just based on that, I won't even click over and see what the video is here. No need. I think we get the idea. So it's good to have, you know, rich content, multimedia on the site. It's great to have, you know, to provide Google with an idea of like what your site's about through that video, and what the page is about through the content on that video. But overall, if it's a crappy video, don't put it up. You suggest trying not to be perfect, which is a great tip, but I would like to know how far someone could stray from the opposite direction, or could stray in the opposite direction. What's the minimal quality guidelines that you consider must be met before a site can be launched? So, like, launching is a funny term. I'm assuming you mean like start promoting it and stuff. But in general, you can sort of think of it as a soft launch. So let's say you buy your hosting account, you put up a theme, and you're just kind of working on it. Think of it as a soft launch where it's out there, it's indexed, you can play around with it. It's not a big deal. No one's going to go to your site. Like, no one will accidentally get there. And you're probably not going to get, a significant, it's pretty hard to get traffic without doing anything. So you're not going to get like a significant amount of traffic that'll make a difference without doing the promotion. So that said, I think as long as you have, the contact page, the about page, privacy and disclosure of the disclaimer rather of the, Amazon relationship, you're in good shape. And then as long as you have like a few articles posted, you don't even really need that many, 10, right? So do 10. And if you're in a pinch, right? Heck, you could do 6 of them, right? If you do 6 articles that are a little longer, that are well written, you'll be fine. And you could think of, Backlinko, for example, Brian Dean. I think total, he only has like 30 articles on his whole site, maybe even less. And, for a while, he only published, like one per month or something like that. Like there really wasn't ever much content. And the point is like, it was just high quality. So, and I may be straying from your question here, but moving on, do you ever post bad pages with low word count, poor grammar, no formatting, with the idea they could be fixed once they start getting some traction in Google? Not on any large scale. I think I may have done that once or twice. But I think it was more like, hey, I have this, 2,000 word article, and I'm going to post it, and I don't have time to do the formatting with the H2 and H3 tags, and I don't have time to pull the images and resize them and get everything how I want it yet. So maybe I'll publish it, but it would be a goal for me to, get that stuff fixed up, and maybe, I publish the content, and then the next day I work on the images, and then the next day I work on the, subheadings to improve it. And then maybe I re-edit it just to make sure, everything is in better shape. What I have done is to post content with like a lower word count than I intend, say 800 words. It starts getting some traction, and then I go back and do all the things that I just mentioned, and I add more content to it. And in fact, that's exactly one of the things I'm going to be doing for, at least one of my niche sites, because of the Amazon changes with the commission rate. So I can go back, add more words, improve the conversion rate, and hopefully, through the additional words, rankings could go up. The page could actually attract more long tail traffic. On top of that, I hope I can also get a higher a higher click-through rate over to Amazon through just optimizing the page better, better calls to action. Perhaps, maybe I'll check and see, how buttons would work for certain calls to action. And then, of course, to add tables in. Like I mentioned, I have a shortage of tables on my site, and it's something that, I deemed less important. But, at this point in time, it is important for me to improve my click-through rate over to Amazon. So overall, I think like the idea here is, I'm more like aim for the high quality stuff first, And then, maybe if you need to, you can go back and like fix the stuff that you decided wasn't too important. And I will mention, like, I described my approach, but I also talked about like perfectionism and some of the issues that I have with, spending too much time on certain areas when I really shouldn't have been. So, it's my own hangups. Maybe my process is an artifact of that as well. Okay, so we'll keep on going. What about categories? And okay, so what about categories? How do we use them as related to the 5 informational content and affiliate content? And is a category an SEO ranking factor? So this applies for tags as well, by the way. So tags and categories don't really rank or don't really come into play in a big way for ranking factor. I'm not sure if it's one of those, 200 ranking factors, but just in general, like, it's not going to make a big difference. So overall, this really comes down to organization of the site and like how the theme treats categories and categories and tags. So overall, it's really just thinking about, the topic of the article, of the post, and what category does it best fit in. So just think about it logically. You can get a really good idea about how to classify a post by, looking at the table of contents of a print book on the topic. You can go to Amazon, of course, like anything else. You can go to Amazon and have a look and see the table of contents for books. It'll give you an idea how to organize the topics. And I guess you could also look at like forums, for example, in the niche and see, how they organize their forum like groups and topics. But overall, you just want it to be like easy to find stuff. So if you're looking at metal detectors, as our example sticks with metal detectors most of the time, if you're thinking about that, sorry, I got a cough here. If you're thinking about metal detectors, for example, maybe there's like how-to category, and maybe there's a product review category, and maybe there's a beginner's metal detector category. All right, I think we may be mostly through the questions here, which is good because my voice is about to crash. Sorry about the coughing here. Okay, I'm back. Just a little coughing fit there. I apologize. Okay, so we're going a little long here, but I'm just going to snap back to the video here also. So for the homepage, you mentioned using like a magazine style section. What about content for the homepage? Do we assign a keyword to it? So overall, no, don't assign a keyword to it. It does, like back in the day, in my first site, the homepage was actually like, 2,000 words. It was affiliate content, like 100%. It was just like one of the posts that I would, publish as affiliate content. It was like product reviews. It was like in the style of like a Q&A, and it had some aspects of the perfect Amazon review, stuff like that. So the idea is to have, some words on the homepage, but usually it would be more around like describing the navigation, or perhaps you have a buyer's guide on one of the topics. So you would say, check out our buyer's guide on buying metal detectors, and you can maybe put some bullet points underneath and say, we talk about the features that you need to worry about when you're buying your first metal detector. We look at 6 different models, including these models. So really, you could just provide it sort of like a table of contents for your whole site, where you're highlighting sort of the areas that you want people to go. So I said table of contents, but really what I mean is like a highlight reel of your site. So you want to point out the areas in which you want people to go. Again, you can use like the magazine style, since you put like nice images, a nice graphic of the user guide. Maybe you have a couple of user guides. Maybe there's a section on like the how-to, like I was mentioning. So, how to use your metal detector, and then again, sort of summarize what you want to talk about or what you are talking about in that user how-to guide or whatever it is. And so overall, it's good to have some words and some content on the page. You're not specifically trying to rank the homepage for anything, but you want it to be useful and helpful. So with that in mind, you can sort of think about the categories. And then the homepage, really you're just trying to organize your site in a smart way and make it easy for a visitor to find the information that they want to find. You're not trying to rank, a category page. You're not trying to rank the homepage for anything specific. So you don't need to assign a keyword or try and target it or anything like that. Okay, and I think that may have been the last question. Yep, I confirm, last question. So we did go over a little bit here. So we have a few minutes. We do have a few people on. Any other questions or follow-up questions based on what I was talking about today? And there's always a tiny bit of a delay, so I'll hang on just a minute here. All right, Leo's good to go. Thank you. Good questions, as always, Leo. Jabron, thanks for joining up. And I know we had Chris and Mohammed as well, so thanks for joining. Okay, so no other questions. Cool. We are good, and I think I will just double check because I have the schedule up. So I'm just going to look on my Webinar Jam so next week, March 7th, we have Tuesday again. We continue to meet at 10:30, which is hopefully, I guess if you're on the call, that's a reasonable time for you, but we're continuing with that time. It just works out better for me and then like most of the other students for the most part. So March 7th, so one more Tuesday meeting, and then we'll move back to Monday for the remaining 3. And, if you weren't able to make it and you're watching the replay, that's cool. If you have questions, that's okay. You could send them in. I'll answer them ahead of time, either via email and or can include them if you want me to. So, all right, I'm going to let everyone go. So have a good day. If you have questions on content or anything like that, let me know. It turns out I do have like 1 or 2 writers on Upwork that I have sort of went through the first stage of interviews, but I have not trialed them for anything. So that said, if anyone needs a writer, I can refer you to them and you can try and work it out with them. Like I said, the rates that I'm paying, maybe a tad more than I was, but still you can get an article for about $15. Typically, most of the people that I've been working with, they're sort of like they're better writers than I am, college educated. Usually they have some sort of like an English or journalism background, and they're like professional like writers in some fashion, which is really good. So like I said, if anybody needs a referral, let me know. I can help you out. I can't vouch for them, but I can provide you a name. So all right, you guys have a good one, and I will talk to you next week. Thanks.